The Canada Revenue Agency and the Canada Revenue Agency Corporation, the real CRA and the fake CRA. More audit power? It is a fraud. It is not an audit. Part 2. You know that an organization is shameless because it has shameless people. Or a government is bad or corrupt because it has bad people or corrupt people in it. This agency is very corrupt. It is shameless. One is the Canada Revenue Agency, the public office, and the other one is the Canada Revenue Agency Corporation, a private corporation created in April 2007 to be the customer service of the CRA, with its first president, CEO, and commissioner, William Baker. The first one has given you financial difficulty since Pierre Trudeau's time. Small farmers were their first victims. Ever since, the number of small farmers declined, and Canada has to depend on import of foods and produce. Things become worse after the creation of the CRA Corporation. They go after the small business operators, small farmers again, and those in the construction industry and rental of properties. And now they want to expand their victims through the small businesses and middle classes through this amendment that Minister Philip Champagne proposed to expand their audit power. But watch it, this is not an audit. This audit is actually a robbery. It is a fraud. It is not an audit. The establishment of the CRA Corporation is illegal because it uses the name Canada Revenue Agency, a duplicate of the Canada Revenue Agency, which is a public office and the nation logistics. It is punishable by law, but the police are afraid of the politicians. The lawyers are also afraid of politicians, or they are reluctant to take the politicians to court for their corrupt and illegal practices because they want to be appointed as leaders in the public organizations or as judges at the judicial office. Therefore, they don't like taking the politicians to court for any misdeeds. Once they are appointed to the judicial positions, they have an IOU to the politicians. They charge you for mischief or other related charges if you go against the politicians. Judges were promoted by the politicians because they raised money for the politicians and their party, and appointed by the Prime Minister to the judicial throne. Chrétien appointed almost 500 judges from the Supreme Court to the lower court. So did Harper. He appointed 480 judges from the Supreme Court to the lower court. Trudeau also appointed judges, but not as much, and one of them was his aunt. These judges never went through the process of becoming judges. They are fresh from the private practice as lawyers to the judicial throne. Therefore, they tend to do things as they did when they were a lawyer. Remember they quickly claimed that the decision is or policy is unconstitutional. When they say that unconstitutional, then they don't really have enough as a judge. A police detective was appointed as a judge, and facing people who were seeking justice, he worked as a judge, but in a way a police detective did. He asked the clerk to research on the defendant. If he could not find the defendant, he ignored the case, or he said to the plaintiff, "You need to find a police investigator to do the investigation." The case just stops there. Of course, you will ask, how can a police detective become a judge? It's money. Take a look at the case of Tamara Lynch and Chris Barber, people who organized the Freedom Convoy in Ottawa during the COVID-19 vaccine mandate. In any democratic country, In a democratic world, what Tamara Lynch and Chris Barber did were legal. It is not about anti-government, but they are promoting an event that the politicians hate. The politicians are people who dislike if their decisions are being challenged. Narcissistic leaders demand total obedience and total submission. They use money to reward those who obey and punish others who disobey. They don't like if their authority is being challenged. They forget that the authority and position they hold are actually granted by you, the people. But they work against you. In terms of the COVID-19 vaccine, it is first about depopulating you, turn you into transhuman, and to brand you as Luciferians. But they don't tell you that. The first judge who handled Tamara Lynch and Chris Barber's case was Justin Trudeau's aunt and was handed a judgment of public mischief. But there were no damages they did. It was James Watson's people, the Ottawa mayor's people, who did the damages. But they put the blame on the Freedom Convoy to make you hate them. They wanted you to hate the Freedom Convoy. Do you ever realize that if there was no Freedom Convoy movement, the totalitarian regime of Justin Trudeau would continue until you all die and have nothing? That is the objective of the WEF. You own nothing but be happy. They are against you because they do not have the foundation as public leaders. Though they occupy positions as politicians, meaning they are policymakers and regulators, they never do policy works but contract the task to outsiders, people who do not know about the government, but external observers who can only see the government from a bevel glass. They never do the work as regulators either. They just follow whatever the third party says, obey what the third party says, because there is a gifting. They politicize everything, while what Tamara Lynch and Chris Barber led people to demonstrate was nothing but a management issue. If Justin Trudeau just met with them as he did with the Antifa or Black Lives Matter, rather than running away and hiding in his cottage in Tofino, BC, the people would not stay in the city for 3 weeks. Justin did not want to meet with the Freedom Convoy leaders because he had promised the WEF that he would get every Canadian vaccinated and get them to surrender all their assets to the Committee of 300, that in the end, they will have nothing but be happy. You will have nothing but be happy. The politicians declare that Freedom Convoy caused disruption, but the Ottawa City Mayor, Jim Watson, even hired people to do counter-demonstration. Who caused the disruption? Jim Watson even sent people to steal the truckers' jerrycan, wood supplies, and even sent Children Aid Society to take the children who were with their parents during the demonstration. The CRA Corporation, the fake CRA, and Service Canada, they are like two peas in a pod. After creating the CRA Corporation, Harper also created Service Canada that operates in a cluster of customer service, and it receives the outsourcing tasks from the Department of Human Resources and Social Development Canada. They process your pension, compensation, and even social insurance number, disability. Those who work at Service Canada are former staff of this department. Then in 2015, Justin Trudeau rebranded this department to become the Department of Families, Children and Social Development Canada. At the same time, Trudeau removed all the corrupt people from this department. These corrupt people are those involved in the fraudulent student loan and theft of social assistance and so forth. After leaving the Department of Human Resources and Social Development, Canada, all these corrupt officials then work as contractors at Service Canada. Then they created a phantom entity called Employment and Social Development Canada. Their intention is to take over Service Canada. Many people don't know about a phantom entity. A phantom entity means an entity that exists in name only on paper or online, but physically does not exist. How can you deal with an entity that does not exist? People created a phantom entity with the sole purpose, which is to fraud you. Since its establishment, they started defrauding you. These corrupt people were actually those who used your identity to withdraw tax dollars in terms of social assistance, student loans, employment insurance, compensation, and even guaranteed income supplement. The amount they ask you to repay is small, but when the amount comes from 1 million people, it is tremendously large to be shared among several people. To fool you, these people even made a welcome letter to Minister Duclos, the Minister of Families, Children and Social Development Canada. But this minister worked at the Parliament Hill, and the department he led is in the Department of Families, Children and Social Development Canada is in Gatineau. In other words, the head is at the Parliament Hill and the body is in Gatineau. They both were not connected. This tells you that this department is very much dysfunctional. To fool you even more, they declare that they have a minister, which is the Minister of Jobs and Employment under Mark Carney. In other words, it declares that it is a department, meaning it is a cabinet ministry. But Carney does not have a department or a ministry called Employment and Social Development Canada. It is a department or a ministry that does not exist. It is a phantom department. It is the name of the corrupt former government officials who want to take over Service Canada. And all their job is just to fraud you. In fact, both the CRA Corporation and Service Canada were created to take over the public service, take over your office, the public office. Since the creation of the CRA Corporation and Service Canada, they turn your HST number into an online bank account. And also your social insurance number becomes an online bank account without your knowledge. It was started with the CRA Corporation victims first. Then by 2020, they have turned almost everyone's social insurance number into an online account without your knowledge. You do not have access to these online accounts, but you can see them when you access your online banking. Ironically, both your HST and social insurance number online bank accounts are attached to offshore accounts. My husband's HST number was an online account created in 2009, and it was attached to 34 offshore accounts. His social insurance number, my social insurance number, our son's social insurance number are also online accounts, and each is attached to two offshore accounts. All these accounts were created in 2009 without our knowledge, and this is illegal. When you want to pay your credit card, your credit card bill at your bank, you give the statement with the account number to the bank employee and he or she will create the account for you. But in the case of HST number and social insurance number accounts, it is not you who have the bank employees created the accounts for you, but the CRA Corporation people and Service Canada people who have the banks to create the accounts for you. It is similar to they own your social insurance number or your HST number. It means that they are using your identity and turn it into an online account of which you do not have access to these accounts. If you pay to these accounts, the real CRA never receives the money. Who knows? The money may end up in someone's accounts in Scotiabank in Costa Rica or Mexico or even in Chile. When you go to online banking, pay attention to these online accounts. They were created a little different from the other accounts, like your other credit cards accounts, that you have the bank employers to open for you. If you pay attention daily, sometimes you see that there is money in that account and then they disappeared. You don't know where's the money coming from and where's the money go. Just in and out. Politicians dislike when you openly express that you don't like their political decisions or political mandate. Therefore, in the case of Tamara Lynch and Chris Barber, they took them to court and charged them with public mischief. I love about this charge. Public mischief? They did not do any damage of properties. All they did was organize the public to get together and protest about the COVID-19 vaccine mandates. If they did not do this, Trudeau still forces you to take the COVID vaccine and you die. Or you will suffer from myriads of diseases. You become transhumans and have no more rights as human beings, as stated by the U.S. Supreme Court. Of course, Trudeau promised the WEF that he would have every Canadian vaccinated because he would make millions in the process. His company, Aquitas, is the one that produces the main ingredients for the COVID-19 vaccine, which is the lipid nanoparticles. The more people take it and the more is the booster, the more money he would make. You need to ask yourself why a vaccine intended to protect you from COVID-19 has lipid nanoparticles in it, because it's not a vaccine. Do you remember that during the COVID-19 vaccine mandate, the CRA Corporation sent a brochure to everyone, every family, but claim it is the government of Canada. It is a marketing gimmick, marketing type, and the message says, we all can help by getting vaccinated. Help who? All Justin Trudeau campaign is about who raised the most money for the political party, the Liberal Party of Canada. It is not about you giving the money, but about they beg you for the money. And in this COVID vaccine mandate, he forced you, he threatened you. These two peas in a pod are like another kind of government. They were to serve Harpers who govern without the government. So removes the public resources to his kingdom. Abraham Lincoln once said that the government is of the people, by the people, and for the people. With this creation, it becomes a corrupt government because it has corrupt people in it. When you turn the government into a corporation, it can be taken over by individuals, globalist corporations, or even foreign corporations. Your leaders can sell your government and the nations, just as Harper did in 2011. Dealing with employment and social development in Canada is the same as dealing with people or contractors of Service Canada. These contractors are the entity, and as I mentioned earlier, They want to take over Service Canada. Pay attention when you receive communication from Service Canada. The envelope says Service Canada, but inside the letter, it says Employment and Social Development Canada. With the PO box address belongs to Service Canada contractor. When you receive a check from Service Canada, at the back it says ESDC. It is only a product placement. They want you to see that their phantom entity or phantom Department of Employment and Social Development Canada exists, but it does not exist physically. It means that the person who processes the check is one of these corrupt officials. By the way, have you noticed that the check you receive every month from the envelope that says Receiver General for Canada, which is a phantom position? It is not the government check. It is a fake government check, and we have politicians who have allowed such illegality to take place because they do not know about the government, and the decisions they made had led the government to operate in an illegal environment. That is why you see there are two numbers on the check. On the internet, you see the Canada at Canada.ca, which is the private website of government. They always claim that their minister is today under Mark Carney is Patty Haju, the Minister of Jobs and Employment. Here's something you have to understand and put it in your mind. Don't let people deceive you with phantom department. Justin Trudeau or Mark Carney does not have a department called Employment and Social Development Canada. They just fool you, and you have allowed them to fool you. Both the CRA Corporation and Service Canada were created to take over the federal public service for Harper's Kingdom, another kind of government where he led the govern without the government. As the government becomes a corporation, it is a different kind of government. A private government, a deep state, as in the private sector, you have companies of the same nature, same kinds. This is the process of having a private government, but it was created and developed at your expense. They withdraw your tax dollars under the rug. Your fiscal budget will always double because the politicians have the IOU to survive this creation of the private sector government. The government is, said Abraham Lincoln, of the people, by the people, and for the people. When it becomes a corporation, you can sell it, which is Harper did in 2011 for free. He signed an agreement with Barack Obama, and you can also merge it, this corporation, as Donald Trump wanted to do by turning Canada into its 51st state. All these were done at your expense. Let me emphasize to you, Employment and Social Development Canada is a phantom department. It does not exist physically. Don't be fooled. If you receive a communication from Employment and Social Development Canada, it means from the contractor of Service Canada. Don't let them fool you. Read this book, Public Sector Perspectives on Biowarfare and Creative Capitalism. You will learn about the true agenda of the COVID-19 and COVID-19 vaccine, the political agenda of the climate change that utilizes public policy, and all are at your expense. It is about the eugenics agenda of depopulation, turning you into transhumans, or transhumanist program that has been approved by the Pope and branding you as Luciferans without your knowledge and consent, but all at your expense. It is funny to charge Tamara Lynch and Chris Barber for public mischief. I think the judge does so because he or she is politically appointed and is kind of paying back to the politicians, paying back the favor. Canadian judges are proposed by the politicians and appointed by the prime ministers. So they have or they sit at the judicial throne, a judicial bench with an IOU to the politicians. They come from private lawyer and become a judge overnight without going through the developmental process, without going through the process of becoming a judge. But Tamara and Chris, you and me, are the people who pay the salary of the judges, not the politicians. The politicians, in fact, are making a living from us and don't pay taxes. This is ingratitude and power abuse. Therefore, they are afraid of charging the politicians, I mean the judges. These judges are afraid of charging the politicians for their corrupt deed. After 2 years of legal battle, the judge sentenced Tamara Lynch and Chris Barber 12 months house arrest and 6 months curfew on charge of public mischief. That is funny, isn't it? The elites, globalists, or lobbyists make a living from you too, but turn around to depopulate you at the discretion of the politicians and who you elected and make a living from your tax dollars. In fact, politicians participated in the pandemic plan all along from the early 1980s. In fact, Canada has been participating in the U.S. on ethical scientific research using your tax dollars and without your knowledge. You have been their guinea pigs, including research and development of bioweapons. A long-time plan has turned into a pandemic with a hidden agenda, introduced with manipulation and deceitfulness that cause you to fear. They measure their power through your fear. The greater is your fear, the greater power they feel, the greater their satisfaction. They become totalitarian. They like to dictate others and demand full obedience and total submission, especially when they are supported or use the political power you grant them. And due to your ignorance, you believe in their propaganda that the COVID vaccine or COVID-19 vaccine is to prevent you, your family, and your neighbor from getting COVID. Some people even believe, well, one of my friends did express his belief that they are 100% protected or guaranteed from the COVID, from COVID-19. But they get COVID after receiving the injection. Don't you remember that Eve was faced with the same propaganda when the serpent asked, "Did God tell you not to eat any of the fruits in this garden?" The serpent wanted Eve to doubt God, and she did doubt God. She said, "No, God allows us to eat all the fruits in this garden, but the one in the middle. If we eat it, we shall surely die." The serpent said, "No, you shall not surely die. In fact, you will become like God. You'll know good and evil." Dr. Fauci said that if you take the COVID-19 vaccine, you, your family, and your neighbor will be protected from COVID. Really? What happened to you after you take the COVID vaccine? You died suddenly or died of other diseases and also died of COVID. You let yourself to be deceived. Colin Powell was fully vaccinated, which means he had 3 injections or maybe more, and yet he died of COVID. The CRA Corporation has become a secret entity behind the CRA since its establishment in 2007. It is hiding behind the CRA and carries the name of the CRA. Just like the customer service of the CRA Corporation, it is doing business as the CRA, but it is not the CRA. It is not a public entity. This is illegal, but how many politicians know about this illegality? They are so focused on what they want to do rather than learning to serve the public and protect the public from being abused by corporation. And this corporation is the CRA Corporation. No one paid attention when the CRA Corporation introduced itself in 2007. It claims it is more professional, but in practice, it is very amateur. It says it is transparent, but it is full of secrecy. They never use real names and proper address. They hide themselves inside PO boxes or mailbox and they use centralized telephone and facsimile. They claim they were well trained, but in reality, they were trained to rob you, and their main task is to manipulate, deceive, lie, and deny. Or if you tell them their fraudulent practices, they just ignore it. They disappear. They argue with you just to stop you from taking or talking against their illegality. They create a long line of corruption that involves those in the real CRA as well. This makes your effort to demand justice or verification go to the trash bin. They totally ignore you. They hide behind the customer service agents to continue lying and deceiving you. As the customer service, they were trained to fight you using their mouth, of course, or just simply ignoring you totally. They will talk and talk and talk and talk and never give you the opportunity to talk. They bark at you, and in the end, you give up. This is their strategy to win over you. They act ignorantly while forcing their illegality on you, knowing that you do not know about the government or how the CRA does its job. After all, even the politicians do not know about the government either. They learn this strategy from the politicians who always argue and counter-argue. Don't you know that argument is a corrupt conversation? No wonder. By the end of the day, they all corrupt. They seem to hate each other during their argument in the chamber, but at the end of the day, they sleep on the same bed. They are so burnt out that they have nothing else good to offer to you. Here are the links you will learn about the CRA Corporation audits. I said it is the CRA, but actually it is the CRA Corporation, and they reap the benefit from this fraudulent audit. That's why they just let them go, which they want to put in the amendments to the Excise Tax Act and Underused Housing Tax Act with the intention to expand their victims. These links tell you how the CRA, or should I say the CRA Corporation, does its audit. It is not an audit, but a political manipulation and deceitfulness to have access to your bank book, your bank account, and the process of intimidation and harassment the victims have to go through. Once they have access to your bank book, they determine that this is the amount of tax you owe. Then they multiply by 6 times or 8 times, and the money they ask from you 6 times or 8 times to be sent to 6 or 8 different people at their different PO box addresses. The purpose to amend is to allow them to rob you or fraud you openly, just as the cryptocurrency does with the banks. It allows them to expand their target market, target victims, no longer small business operators, but up to the middle level business, the higher class. Don't forget that politicians go to the debating chamber with ready-made policies or the so-called amendment without digesting it. This amendment is a raw materials that requires inspection, requires analysis. This amendment should never be part of a political debate, but a management process. It opens more door for the unethical agents to use the position's authority and the name of the CRA to abuse you more and more while robbing and defrauding you at the same time. Their court, or they call the court, is a fake court. It doesn't exist.